This video is sponsored by Squarespace.
Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel. My name is Anita Sadowska and I'm a swimmer and fashion photographer, and I show you how I do and what I do on this channel. And today I want to talk to you about something super exciting, and it's the brand new Sony 28-70 f2 lens that just dropped. So as you guys see, this is a very exciting video. The Sony 28-70 f2 just got announced today. I was lucky enough to get to test it out for a few weeks before the release and give you my thoughts and opinions. And I thought, which better way would it be than to compare it to the already existing Canon 28-70 f2. It was a very interesting photo shoot. I did like a real life photo shoot outside, so you can see the side-by-side comparisons. I will be talking about the lens stats. We'll tell you which ones I think are fitted for who and so on. So let's get right into the video. First thing first, I think it's important to talk about some of the biggest differences and the basic stats. One of the biggest differences between the two lenses is their weight and size. The new Sony 28-70 f2 is 11% smaller and 36% lighter than the Canon 28-70 f2. It's around 919 grams, so around 2 pounds, versus 1,430 grams, so around 3 pounds. Sony is around the same size as the 24-70 f2.8 Mark I lens that I actually have, so it wasn't much of a switch. They were actually pretty similar in size. Just to give you a little bit of a background for the photo shoot, I used two cameras. I used the Canon R8 and the 28-70 f2 from Canon, and then I used the Sony a7R4 and the new 28-70 f2 from Sony. We shot in Malibu, in these Malibu hills. I thought it would be a really cool example of how the lenses work. There's loads of bokeh going everywhere. There's lots of greenery, leaves, and I thought it would make a perfect scenario. We actually shot around 2 or 3 p.m. in the afternoon, so the light was still relatively harsh. It wasn't as harsh as it is in the summer, but it was still definitely there, and it was blazing, so we kind of stood more with the shade. But I did take some photos for you with full sun, so you can kind of see an example of how the lenses handle it as well. So without further ado, let's get into more of the stats. One of the reasons why I never pulled the trigger on the Canon 28-70, besides the $3,000 price tag, was the size and the weight of the lens. I really loved the images it produced, but it was such a hefty big boy, and I just did not feel like carrying it on my back during the photo shoots. I shoot outside a lot, I travel a lot, and it just creates a lot of back problems. So that's why I was like, you know what, let me see what Sony comes up with. Let me see if Sony comes up with something smaller, and they did. So let's talk about the stats though. Let's figure out what else is different between the lens. Sony and Canon target high-performance photography and videography, but they cater to slightly different needs, and I would say Canon is more of a photography lens, while the Sony is more of a photography as well as videography and content creator lens, which I think is a good way to be in today's world. Let's talk about the optics and the image quality. The Canon RF 28-70 f2 is known for its stunning image quality across the zoom range. It's one of the fastest zoom lenses with constant f2 aperture. It's excellent for low light and achieving shallow depths of field. It uses 19 elements in 13 groups, which includes ultra low dispersion elements to reduce chromatic aberration and enhance sharpness. However, it lacks a spherical and super ED elements that Sony has, so it might show slightly more aberration, especially in challenging lighting. The brand new Sony 28-70 f2 features 20 elements in 14 groups, including 3 spherical elements, 3 super EDs, and 1 ED element. It's designed to suppress chromatic aberration and distortion exceptionally well, providing high sharpness and clarity to your images as well as video. The Sony lens also has a nano AR2 coating for flare and ghosting control, especially useful in backlit conditions. Canon lacks specialized coating, which means the slightly more flare and extreme lighting. For this first photo test, I got my model to sit in this brush. She was sitting on the trunk first just to get some photos of her just sitting and, you know, using different focal lengths on both lenses. I wanted to see how the bokeh looks when you're shooting fully open versus when you're shooting on maybe a closer focal range. And then after that, we got to move back
and I got her to stand in the bushes basically because I wanted to see how the bokeh performs, how the f2 shows on both lenses. Is the bokeh different from one another?
Now let's talk about aperture and bokeh. With Canon, with the f2 aperture, it offers excellent low lighting performance and consistent exposure across the zoom range. The 9-blade aperture produces smooth bokeh, but slightly less rounded than Sony 11-blade. Sony, with an 11-blade circular aperture, it provides incredibly soft, rounded bokeh, making it ideal for portrait work and giving you more of a cinematic look. It also has an aperture control ring with a clickless option, adding versatility for video as well.
And looking at the photos, I have to say there isn't a crazy amount of difference. I feel like the Sony bokeh is slightly bit more defined than the Canon one, which is neither a good or a bad thing. I think it's just different. But they do definitely have a tiny bit of difference. The Canon bokeh is just softer and more blurry in a way. But I do like the images, and I think overall they are pretty close to each other and there isn't that much of a difference.
Let's talk about the autofocus performance, and I feel like this is where the Sony actually shines. The Canon uses nano USEM motors, providing fast and smooth focusing, great for photography and some videography. However, it's not as silent as the Sony's XD linear motors, which might be noticeable in audio-sensitive video setups, and it is important for a lot of people because that Canon lens is loud, let me tell you. For the Sony, it has the 4XD linear motors that allow it for extremely quiet, fast, and precise autofocus. It's designed specifically to avoid disturbing sound-sensitive environments, which is a big deal for videography. The Sony lens also boasts a high-speed tracking at up to 120 frames per second, making it exceptional for action and sports photography, which is not a feature that Canon has. Now let's do a quick portrait test. I'm going to take some photos on both Canon and Sony on the same settings, the same aperture, the same f-stops, and we'll see how they compare side by side.
This brand new Sony 28-70 f2 lens is going to be around $2,700 US, and I know it's expensive. I know it's a pretty hefty price tag for a lens, but let me tell you, if there was one lens that I would use for the rest of my life, it's probably the 28-70. And I know it's a bold statement, but I think having the 28-70 and having the f2 makes such a difference. You can pretty much blend all these other lenses into this one. It's perfect for weddings, for portraits, for events. It allows you for a lot of low light work. It allows you to have so many possibilities with bokeh. I just really love this lens and the f-stop, and I will be definitely getting it as soon as it releases.
Now let's talk a little bit about video, because I feel like this is where the Sony lens really shines in comparison to the Canon. I think it's definitely more geared toward videographers than the Canon lens is, and it makes a huge difference because the Canon is okay, but it could be improved for sure. For the Canon, although the Canon RF 28-70 f2 is great for video thanks for its excellent optical quality, it lacks dedicated video features like focus breathing suppression or in-body breathing compensation, which can affect the smoothness of video focusing. The Sony lens includes focus breathing suppression, and when paired with compatible Sony cameras, in-body breathing compensation, creating smoother focus transitions. It has an internal focusing design which helps maintain balance on gimbals. Canon's focus design, on the other hand, can shift slightly during focusing, which might require minor rebalancing on the gimbals. Now let's get on to build and handling. The Canon RF 28-70 is well built and weather sealed, but lacks some advanced controls Sony provides, like a zoom smoothness switch or customizable focus hold buttons. It's heavier at around 3.5-15 pounds, which can make it challenging for handling or gimbal work over long periods of time. Sony sits at around 2 pounds, which is over a pound lighter than the Canon. It's also significantly smaller lens, which is similar to the 24-70 2.8 G Master Mark I. Sony's lens is also weather sealed with additional fluorine coating on the front element to repel water and oil. This Sony lens has practical controls like zoom smoothness adjustments and focus hold buttons, providing greater customization. It's designed for easier handling and balancing on the gimbal with a lightweight and compact internal focus system.
For this next test, I decided to grab both lenses and have a direct sunlight situation and see how the lens perform. And I have to say, I didn't really notice much of a difference in terms of highlights and shadows. I will say I've noticed a color difference, but it's an overall color difference between Sony and Canon. And I'm not necessarily sure if it's the lens per se or if it's more of a camera thing. But the Canon files are definitely slightly bit warmer and a bit more saturated, as you can see here on the RAWs. I will say that the Sony in general tends to lean a little bit more green, while the Canon tends to stay a bit warmer. So I don't know, I would assume that it's more of a camera thing than a lens thing, but the images did come out slightly bit warmer on the Canon than they did on the Sony.
Now onto the close-up performance. Canon has a minimum focusing distance of 39 inches, which is 0.98 meters, limiting close-up capability slightly, and the max magnification is only 0.19. For Sony has a shorter minimum focusing distance of 14.8 inches, which is only 0.38 meters, and a max magnification of 0.23, giving it better close-up capabilities and more versatility for macro style shots. Time to have a word from our sponsor. Whether you're a seasoned pro or just starting out, Squarespace offers intuitive tools to build websites as unique as your art. One of the features that I'm absolutely thrilled about is the Fluid Engine. With its next generation website design system, unlocking unbreakable creativity has never been easier. Starting with a best-in-class template, you can customize every design detail effortlessly using the reimagined drag and drop technology. It's seamless on both desktop and mobile, allowing you to stretch your imagination online. For someone like me who values a unique, visually stunning website, Fluid Engine is a game changer. And photographers, listen up. Squarespace isn't just about beautiful websites. It's also a powerful tool for selling your photography. With the online store features, whether it's physical prints or digital downloads, Squarespace provides everything you need to start selling online. It's like having your own photography store at your fingertips. Now, here's something that sets Squarespace apart: appointments. Accept booking for its private sessions, workshops, or group classes directly on your website. Manage your schedule, accept secure payments, and even send automatic reminders. It's a lifesaver for us photographers who wear multiple hats. And speaking of showcasing your work, Portfolios and Galleries feature is a dream for photographers. Professional designs, customizable galleries, and the option to add password-protected pages. It's the perfect platform to present our visual stories to the world. But wait, there's more. Monetize your creativity with member areas. Sell exclusive access to sections of your website, turning your passion into a source of income. It's like having your own VIP section for your most dedicated followers.
Now, I know you're eager to get started. Head to squarespace.com/Anita for a free trial, and when you're ready to launch, you'll receive 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain.
So, fellow photographers, make your online presence as stunning as your photography. I will see you on Squarespace. Okay, so let me know what you guys think. Would you use the Canon? Would you use the Sony? Do you have any preference? Do you prefer any image one over the other? I think for me personally, I would still choose the Sony just because of the size and the weight, as well as the video capabilities, because unfortunately the Canon video capability is definitely lacking in comparison to Sony. And as someone who does both video and photo, I think it's important to have a more versatile lens, especially something that costs this much money. They are expensive lenses, but I have to say when it comes to photo quality, they are extremely close. It's really hard to tell which one is which, so I can totally see somebody picking one over the other. It's just for me particularly and for my needs, I would probably pick the Sony. Okay guys, I hope you liked this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up, please subscribe to my channel, and I'll see you guys in the next one.